So a man we've not seen much of for the last couple of years, Nikki Cook, former WBO super featherweight champion. He's had, well, the best part of 2 years out of the ring through various injuries, but he's back tonight. It's just a 6-rounder against Yousef Al Hamidi. He could be lined up for bigger and better things, Nikki Cook. Obvious pedigree, winning that world title against Alex Arthur. He lost it to Roman Martinez, and the man Martinez beat Ricky Burns. Maybe in the frame for Nikki Cook somewhere down the line. It's an obvious fight to make. I'm sure Cookie fancies it. Colin Hart, good evening.
Yes, good evening, Ian. He might, yeah, I think he's a lucky boy to get a world title shot so soon after coming back after that long layoff, but there you go. I suppose that's modern boxing for you.
It is indeed. It's, I guess, an obvious fight to make. There's been rumours and speculation that it might happen. Nothing confirmed. Ricky Burns, of course, fights in Liverpool in mid-July, and no opponent announced yet for that fight. Maybe a bit too soon for Nikki Cook. I'm sure I have half an eye on Burns for later on in the year, even if it doesn't happen in July.
I know somebody who wouldn't object, and that would be Ricky Burns.
It's a decent fight. It's England against Scotland. And Cook's probably got more pedigree than Burns' last two opponents, hasn't he, Colin?
I suppose you're right there. After, you know, when he won the title, he seemed to have had an easy ride so far.
Nicky Cook, of course, he beat Alex Arthur to win the WBO super featherweight title. Bit of a shock that night. I think Arthur went into the fight as favourite. Nicky Cook...
he was a champion, wasn't he?
Yeah. He won on points, Cook, and Arthur complained afterwards, but wasn't too much to complain about. In his first defence, he was outboxing Roman Martinez, Nicky Cook, before he was stopped, I think in 4 rounds. Good to see him back in the ring. He's only had a couple of career defeats, both in world title fights, and former undefeated British and Commonwealth and European featherweight champion. So he knows his way around the ring, Nicky Cook. Yousef Al Hamidi's a typical kind of opponent in this situation, Colin, isn't he? Very solid.
I wonder how many former world champions he's fought.
There might be he's certainly fought some decent guys. I know he's fought John Murray.
Slippery, isn't he?
Yeah. Not particularly threatening. Not a puncher. But he'll give you rounds, and that's probably what Nicky Cook needs at the moment. He's got 1 under his belt so far in this fight, as the bell goes for the end of the first session. Listen to what's being said in the corner. We were talking about father and son relationships earlier, weren't we, Colin?
Yeah.
Francis Robinson and Steve Robinson. Another one here with Paul and Nicky Cook. Guess he'll be quite relieved to get that first round out of the way. It must be strange coming back after a couple of years out.
I mean, he's got to try and cut off the ring because otherwise he'll be chasing for all night long, trying to catch up with their meeting.
Round 2.
There's another one who's always in shape, isn't he? I mean, he's never out of condition.
Cook just taking his time here. Oh, I mean, he's not a huge threat, I don't think. I keep saying Cook probably just relieved to get a few rounds under his belt. title fight against Arthur Collin. He really boxed well that night. It was up in Manchester, I think. I think it was the same night that Amir Khan
fought
Bradis Prescott, wasn't it?
I think that was the night, yeah.
And got knocked out. And Cook went into that fight. He come up from feather. I think he'd lost a world title fight at featherweight, struggling at the weight. And he challenged Alex Arthur. And at the time, Arthur was the coming man, wasn't he? He'd taken a while to break through, but had that world title. Everyone expected him perhaps to have a fairly lengthy reign.
I'm just thinking where it was. Wasn't it up in Scotland?
No, it was at the MEN Arena.
Was it MEN Arena?
So
I know it was a bit of a surprise that Arthur was beat that night.
And,
it was a right decision, despite Arthur's objections and moaning and groaning.
But Cook, he boxed beautifully, didn't he? He stuck to a game plan.
Yeah.
Didn't get drawn into a war. I think Alex Arthur was probably the bigger puncher.
But of course, Cook was motivated that night. I can't see him getting himself too high up for this fella, knowing he's seen the media like we have. He knows what he's in for tonight.
Well, I guess
trying to catch him up.
The kind of fight that from Cook's point of view, you want to sort of box in third gear or something, isn't it? And just shed some of that ring rust.
Well, he wants to get the feel of the ring and
save yourself for maybe bigger challenges ahead.
Well, of course, beating this fella proves nothing, doesn't it?
No. Do you think a fight between him and Burns is a legitimate option?
Well, it's legitimate. You've got one former world champion fighting a world champion. I mean, it's. I would have thought you'd have had to give Cook a couple of more fights before he fights for a world title, but stranger things have happened in boxing in this day and age.
Well, I guess...
I mean, has he earned a shot at the world title? That's what I'm saying.
No, I suppose not. I suppose, though, Colin, that shows these days are so few and far between, and opportunities are so scant that, as you say, in an ideal world, 10 years ago, he might have been able to fight in 6 weeks' time and then shed all that ring rust. But there's not many shows now for guys to get back into the swing of things, is there? So you have to take more of your chances.
Yeah, well, of course, it's more difficult to put on fights these days than it was because of limited television dates. I suppose television would be quite happy to see a domestic world title fight between Cook and Burns. But, just think of all the guys out there who are contenders for Burns' title to be overlooked for a man who's been out the ring for 2 years, has come back, wins a 6-rounder, and we're talking about him putting him in for a world title. To me, it doesn't make sense. But as I said, stranger things have happened these days. I know if I was from the number 1, 2, 3, 4 contender, I wouldn't be too happy about it. But maybe those guys don't appeal to the television company.
Well, I was going to make that point. Perhaps commercially, though, the fight between Cook and Burns it makes more sense than Burns against maybe an Eastern European or a relatively obscure
or an African. Yeah. Yeah, I can see that point of view.
Sort of Battle of Britain always sells well, doesn't it? Cook's quite a good talker. He was supposed to have that fight with Scott Harrison, wasn't he? Do you remember that?
Yes.
Fell through. That was at the XL, wasn't it? Just before Christmas, and fell through.
Yeah.
At the last minute, Scott Harrison went AWOL.
He's still in jail, isn't he, Paul Scott?
No, I read.
Is he out?
I don't think so. You read sporadic newspaper reports that he's sort of all set to resume his career and has another 3 or 4 years left, but I think he's still serving at the pleasure of the Spanish authorities, I think.
That's right. Last I heard, he was still in jail in Spain, but he may have...
Good fighter, wasn't he, Harrison?
He was a terrific fighter, and the only trouble was he could not make the weight very easily. I mean, I remember interviewing him the day before, before a weigh-in, and I was doing some work for Showtime, the American cable, coming in. He looked like he'd just stepped out of a concentration camp. He looked emaciated, his eyes had sunk in, trying to make the weight. The following day, he looked a completely different man because he could eat and drink, and he looked a normal human being.
Well, so the running joke was that he weighed in a featherweight, and then by the time he got in the ring, he was a welterweight, wasn't he?
Yeah, it wouldn't surprise me. No, he was a good fighter. It's sad that the way he ended up.
Yeah, that would have been a good fight between him and Cook. I wonder how much Cook has left to offer. Been in too many hard fights. Stopped in both his world title losses.
Yes, but he wasn't exactly getting a battering, was he?
Well, the Roman Martinez stoppage was relatively...
It was quick and unexpected.
It was an execution, wasn't it? If that's not too glib a phrase. But the Steve Luovano for the WBO featherweight title was up and down a bit in that fight. That was a tough one for him. I think he was killing himself to make the weight. Nikki Cook, hence the move up to super feather. Martinez was a funny character, wasn't he, Colin? A bit crude. But I remember he put Ricky Burns down, didn't he, in the first round?
First round, we thought, hello, it's all over. He won't last the round.
I think it was a sort of straight right hand, and Burns was on his backside.
And of course, unfortunately, the two subsequent defences, he hasn't been able to replicate that performance, which was an excellent performance and surprised most of us.
Well, I suppose the defences were a bit on the low-key side, weren't they? Maybe he was a big favourite to win. The opponent didn't really threaten him much, did he? All he needed to do was box, and he was always going to win. So
a lot of what happens to fighters is motivation is very important. And Cook just going through the motions, isn't he, tonight?
You can see both Cook and Burns being really motivated if they did meet for a world title.
Sure. But as I say, all domestic fights, they sort of promote a certain amount of needle, some of it forced. Tonight we've got the genuine needle between DeGale and Groves.
Yeah, that one's been building up nicely. Tension between the two of them bubbling away. All in contrast to this six-rounder, which is a bit more on the quiet side. Sometimes it's almost a glorified spa, isn't it, Colin? These 4 and 6 rounders, especially Cook's been at a much higher level than Al Hamidi and a much higher level than this particular fight tonight.
I would think Nicky's had harder sparring sessions in the gym than he's getting here tonight.
We've got him winning the first 3 rounds relatively comfortably. Cook's in the black shorts, and Al Hamidi in the blue shorts with the red trim. He's one of those guys, Al Hamidi, that if he'd fall on the right side of being the house fighter or the away man, if he'd been the house fighter, he might have had a few more wins under his belt.
But he doesn't try to win, does he?
No.
Catch me if you can. That's his attitude.
8 wins and 33 losses for Al Hamidi. A couple of draws as well. Just 1 stoppage, so not a puncher.
How many times has he been stopped? I haven't seen the record.
A handful,
You
I
know?
think. Not many. He does lack a bit of ambition, though, doesn't he, Colin?
To put it mildly. Even allowing for the awkwardness of Hamidi, I've got to say, Cook hasn't impressed me so far tonight.
Oh, he's almost going through the motions, isn't he, Colin? But what can you do when your opponent spends most of the fight going backwards?
Cut him off and belt him.
That's why you're here, Colin. So Cook's 32 in September. A little bit long in the tooth for a smaller fighter, isn't he? Super feather, maybe got a couple of years left at the top.
The point that perhaps I'm trying to make in view of what you said earlier, Ian, is that when you look at this tonight, if some stranger came in and say, the guy in the black shorts, you know, he's a world title contender, you would say, I beg your pardon. Does he look like a world title contender? He's winning every round, but, you know, it's...
I think so. It's strange as well sometimes, isn't it, Colin, when these guys, when former world champions come back in 6 and 8 rounders, there's a lack of, if they've not had a world title fight and they're coming through the ranks, there's like a real kind of buzz and excitement about them. And then suddenly, we've seen it with Alex Arthur as well, they come back, they've been used to topping the bill in front of 15, 20,000 people, and suddenly they're down the card, they're fighting in front of 1,000 people in the arena.
That's right.
6
No
rounds.
motivation,
Yep.
fighting somebody who's only in there to survive. I take all that point, but shall we put it this way? A world champion contender would be so irritated that he would go in there and try and belt him out of there. He's got nothing to lose. He's not going to get hurt by this fella.
It's one thing. I mean, Ricky Burns is more positive. I suppose Al Hamidi might be sort of not ideal preparation for Burns, but at least Ricky Burns is one of those awkward fighters, isn't he?
I mean, it'd be much better for him to have someone who would go in there and give him a fight. You know, give him something to really think about.
Well, one would imagine that Cook is going to win this relatively comfortably. Again, Cook well on top in this round, as he has been in the 4 previous rounds, but not too much in the way of action. I better remember Al Hamidi throwing a punch, actually.
Doesn't make our job any easier
No,
either,
it doesn't.
trying to describe something that ain't happening.
Oh, we've sort of done 12 minutes on the Burns and Cook fight, haven't we? We're running out of things to talk about.
I mean, to be fair, can you remember one memorable punch that Cook has thrown or landed?
No, but at least he's trying.
Yes, very trying.
How do you see a fight between him and Burns going, Colin?
I'm afraid only one way. Burns is too young and too quick, and
Really grown into that sort of world championship, hasn't he, Burns? Since he won the title. Brilliant against Martinez.
he astonished us all, particularly after being floored in the opening round. He thought, that's it, won't last much longer. And then, of course, he boxed absolutely brilliantly after that.
And he sort of
And fought, and outfought. He didn't only just outbox him, he outfought him.
no, he showed a lot of heart. I think deserved an easy couple of fights as well afterwards.
Mind you, there was a tremendous atmosphere up in Glasgow that night.
Yep.
And, as I say, that lifts a kid when you've got that kind of support behind you. They do support their men up in Scotland.
Well, I think they do, but I think they're aware as well when their man needs that kind of support. And I guess against when he fought Andreas Evanson and Joseph Lariat, Burns didn't really need to be lifted by the crowd, did he? Because it was...
Well, the crowd didn't
They-
get at him. The crowd, were relatively quiet by comparison to when he won the title. But they weren't getting at him. They
Oh no, but they knew that Burns was supposed to win, and
Yeah.
was all
They
in
knew
all
the,
likelihood
they knew the
going to win.
calibre of the opponent, and they accepted it, and they supported him, and they didn't get upset when maybe the fight wasn't as good as they'd hoped it was going to be. Well, it wasn't spectacular. Neither of them were.
One would imagine that they might get more behind Burns for the if he fought Nikki Cook.
Yeah, but if they do fight, well, no, they can't fight in July. I don't think Nikki Cook is ready, to be fair. But if they fight in Glasgow, certainly, particularly he's fighting an Englishman. I mean, the Scots do like their boys to beat Englishmen. There's no doubt about that.
So where, for your money, where does Nikki Cook go next? I mean, does he need a 10-rounder, a 12-rounder? Does he need international opposition?
I think he needs sharpening up. I mean, you know, to fight Burns for a world title, he needs to sharpen up a bit. So that would mean, you know, certainly one, if not two, 10-round fights maybe.
Perhaps a sort of an official eliminator as well.
I mean, there's nothing to stop him fighting on the 16th of July, and then maybe in the autumn fighting Burns for the title. I really do think he needs another fight, at least. But I don't make the matches.
Well, a win here tonight may be good enough to sort of see him parachuted in as Burns' opponent.
I suppose somebody will say to me, but Sugar Ray Leonard was out the ring 2.5 years and came back and fought Hagler and beat him. But I don't think Nick Cook would
Oh, it's a good shot from Cook.
Stand comparison with Sugar Ray Leonard.
Good right hand there.
Yeah, and Hamidi was hurt by that one.
He was. He just forced him to hold on, didn't it?
Yeah,
I think.
First time he's gone forward, and he only went forward because he could grab Cook. Yeah, that got his attention all right. So at least we've seen a decent shot land. He's still going backwards, but a little slower.
I think his head's clear enough, but Nikki Cook's now just got him trapped in a corner, and now Al Hamidi really does get on his bike and actually sprints across the ring. Definitely his best round of the fight, this one for Nikki Cook.
Well, because he's sharper in the 6th round than he was in the 1st.
Yeah. Wow, Hamidi really is on his bike here, isn't it? I mean, he could almost do with ticking off from the referee.
Well, I've seen that done before.
Very negative.
Saying, you know, you're in here to fight, try and make a fight of it.
There's certainly only one man trying to fight this evening. That's the bell for the end of the 6th round, end of the fight as well. Nikki Cook takes well, I would imagine a comfortable victory. Be surprised if it wasn't a 60-54 decision.
I think you were spot on, Ian.
Ladies and gentlemen, your referee scores the contest 60 points to 54. The winner.
Brilliant, Ian. Great.
Nikki Cook.
Probably not the hardest fight to score.